Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of Inclusion Starts Now, the podcast. Today, I met with a person that I have only met virtually, which actually I guess is a lot of the people I talk to on here. But her name is Bhavna, and she has her own podcast, which we'll talk about for a little bit. But we very much attempted to talk about the Grinch and how the Grinch stole Christmas and how that compares to feeling excluded in your community. So, get ready for a conversation where we definitely got distracted and kept needed to be redirected back to the topic. This episode is sponsored by seasonal coffee flavors because you bring me so much joy and I have to drink you every time I see you. And I'll buy my vanilla flavored coffee as well. But then I will continue to buy holiday coffee knowing that it's about to leave me. Anyways, thank you, Seasonal Coffee, for being here and making my life complete and my family. Okay, let's hear it from Bhavna. So tell me about your podcast. I want to hear
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, we are the Bloody Broads pod, however you want to say it. We love alliteration. We're a horror movie and media, I guess I should say horror media podcast, where we like to talk about all things representation, mental health. We deep dive into the things that people you can't find in a movie review. Like a movie reviewer is not going to show you the things that we talk about. And yeah, we have fun doing it. We're not subtle about our opinions either. So, we very much welcome discourse, but also like stop listening if you don't like what we have to say.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you like watch all these scary movies, I'm assuming? Like you're
Oh,
into scary
definitely.
movies.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I love horror movies because real life, as evidenced by the day that we're recording this, is way scarier.
Yeah, it is. I used to love horror movies until I lived alone. And then I was like, oh, this is scarier to like
Yeah.
be by myself.
And you're out west, right? So that's like horror movie
There's-
central.
And there's like a lot of serial killers over here, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know if it's like the forest or what, but
I don't know. And it's always like the Metro Vancouver area.
oh no, what?
Yeah. There were like
Wait,
three,
like
I think,
Vancouver,
running around.
Canada?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in
Yeah.
Vancouver, Washington, so I'm
Oh,
gonna
nice. Yes, yes. Not your area, but just north of
disassociate.
you.
No. You said there's more happening in Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah.
Not good, man. Not good.
No, no, definitely not good. Don't look those up. You won't sleep.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I someone told me once they gave me a book recommendation for a serial killer story. God, what? I think it was about one in California, and this is when I was living in California. I
Hmm.
seriously read like 10 pages and I was terrified. And I'm like, no, I don't want to like know that people are
Yeah.
doing this. Like this is horrible.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I totally get it. Like we on our pod too, we're also really critical about true crime media as well. Like, because we both are fascinated by it, but not in the grotesque way that it's like being talked about in a lot of
yeah,
spaces, especially by white women. Not you, obviously, but I mean,
that is okay. I
it
definitely agree
is.
with you.
Yeah, and it's kind of gross. Like, I mean, I'm not going to name drop the podcast, but the name itself is kind of cringy when it comes to murder. So,
Yeah.
there's one of those, and we don't like that. I'm fascinated by it in the psychology of it. Like more like because I could never do it. So I'm like, how can
Yeah.
somebody do this? It's like I guess it's my ADHD nature as well of being like, how does it work? How does this
Yeah.
happen? Where are the patterns? But um, it's more of a private thing for me. I'm not like out here being like, yes, do you want to talk about this serial killer and like collect them like trading cards or like think they're hot? Because I'm like, that's not hot.
Yeah. Yeah. I especially when they like I know after the one that Zac Efron was starring in, Ted
Yeah, the Ted Bundy one.
Bundy one. I
Yeah.
remember a lot of people being like, well, if he's Ted Bundy, that's okay. And it's like
God,
still bad, guys. And like
so bad.
You, that TV
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one too. Even though that I did really like the books. The show's been good too. But
The the thing I love about the show is that Penn Badgley's really responsible with it because he's said like publicly so many times, he's just like, if you
mhm.
find Joe hot, please go seek help.
Yeah. And even though today we decided to talk about how the Grinch Stole Christmas, Bhavna has a lot of information about the ableism in horror movies and how they've gotten better, um, but different things that she might see in horror films.
It's actually gotten a lot better in a lot of
Oh.
different ways, but there are still a lot of cringy things in there, and we do pick those apart. Like it's ableism in the sense of you have like the miraculous character with so much strength, like a Michael Myers or like, a Jason or something, or they're so disfigured they have to wear a mask and it's so grotesque. But like that's not as prevalent as like now. Like, like now when they come out with like new horror movies, it's a lot more. I'm gonna sound really heady here and use the word cerebral, but like um it now more it the now what they're discriminating against more so is like mental illness, even though they've gotten better about it. There's still that play with, oh, this person's crazy, like, and
Yeah.
gaslighting and all that kind of stuff. So it's more so on the mental disabilities or mental illnesses that they
Yeah.
tend to do as dirty.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if I could really wrap my head around like any sort of summary with like mental health representation because there feels it's just so different for everybody and it's such a wide range of like what even like some sort of like internalized trauma that people have that they don't even really realize that they have
Hmm.
and how much that can affect their behaviors and their attitudes and their ways of communicating. Like I just feel like I don't have a way to simplify any of
Yeah.
that as it's not a
Like,
simple thing to talk about.
no, and it's like, well, I have the trifecta. I have ADHD, depression, and anxiety. It's one of those like my doctor was like, which do you want to treat
Trifecta.
first? Um,
Beautiful.
but it's just been a journey for me personally to be like, oh, so that's why I am the way I am.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so I'm basically ungaslighting myself from society,
Yeah.
turning off
I
that
like
lamp.
that.
Slowly being like, oh wait, no, I'm not irritable. I'm just overstimulated.
Yeah.
You're like, like, oh, why I'm always right is just because I'm always hypersensitive and seeking out patterns. Like, not that I'm always right. I don't mean that in an arrogant sense. I mean that in like why do I have feelings about people
Yeah.
that other people can't see? Why can I see things in certain situations? Why can I see how a situation's going to go either positively or negatively ahead of time, not in a preternatural way, but in like ooh, you maybe shouldn't have said that kind of way?
Yeah.
It's just a lot of like, oh, okay, it's not normal to have an inner monologue. It's not normal to have songs stuck in your head. It's
Yeah.
just been a lot of unwrapping.
Well, I love that ungaslighting. Like you're
Yeah.
ungaslighting yourself. I think that's such a good way to look at it because I have had a lot of conversations with people who either choosing not to want to go that route of getting a diagnosis or choosing as an adult to get a diagnosis. And in both scenarios, it's like, well, in one, they feel very like they just don't want to deal with something else. And to me, I'm like, but if you get an answer, then you're gonna get
Yeah.
like the support you need. Like it will be helpful. It's not gonna like hurt you, it's gonna help you. But then to the people who do get diagnosed later, I see that people have kind of like this stage, I don't not like grief, but of like, I wish I knew this sooner, so I could have done something sooner.
Yeah.
And like a regret of not getting it done sooner. I'm not sure what word goes there.
It's more like you're thinking of like, oh wow, if I'd known this sooner, I would have done this. And if I had done that, I could have done this. And who would I
Yes.
be now?
Yes. That is exactly, yeah, that's exactly what people have said to me. They're just like, what could I have been doing? and now I'm like just figuring this out in like my mid 30s or something.
Hey
Um,
man,
yeah.
it's not too late. Like I know that sounds really cliche and really like, corny, but also as neurodivergent people are the reason why we feel so young is I forgot what the study is, but it basically we are younger in the brain than
Oh,
like most people. Like we feel younger too. So like I don't like I'm 36, I don't feel it.
what? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, I don't know, like don't cite me as like the gospel truth. Like there are articles and stuff out there, but like our prefrontal cortex doesn't like the whole like your brain isn't cooked
Yes.
yet. Our brain doesn't cook till 35.
Interesting. And it's the prefrontal, because I know the
Yeah.
prefrontal cortex is like I always explain that that's where we're like, oh, we can die. Or like you start getting more, um, like you can now understand like the bad things that can happen. And so a lot of people, and I thought because it was like 25 for,
25
I guess
for
typically,
neurotypical people,
yeah.
but for neurodivergent people it's around 35. So like I'm
Wow.
only just becoming an adult technically.
Congratulations.
Thank
Welcome.
you. I already pay taxes. I
Ah, darn.
already, yeah, I already have a grown-up job.
Oh, that's a bummer. Well, I'm sorry that
Yeah,
you had to do all those adult things
I
without
know.
the frontal cortex lobe. Pre
That's okay.
I
It
don't feel
just
like
led
I'm
me to
saying that
have a
right.
lot. Yeah, I mean,
Pre,
prefrontal cortex, is that it?
yeah, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, we're a science podcast now.
Yes, science podcast. But we were going to talk about
Mhm.
the Grinch. Is that
Yes.
yes?
Yeah.
So, again, this is another thing that has kind of just started popping up, I guess, on my feed this last year or something, where people have been like, I understand the Grinch now. Like, he doesn't want to be around other people and wants, time alone. Um, but now shifting the narrative of like, people didn't want him because he was mean. And I feel like I can just jump into a huge behavior conversation here of like how we can support a lot of different behaviors. But I guess overall, have
Hmm.
you thought about this before? Is this something that has like come up on your podcast?
It not on like
I know it's
not
not a horror
necessarily
film.
like on our podcast, not the Grinch specifically, but me personally, yes. I have definitely seen that. Like for me personally, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it, and I get the being othered. I get it. Like, he didn't really belong with them. And whether we don't know whether he isolated himself or he was forced to isolate himself, but either way, he didn't feel comfortable down there regardless.
Yeah.
Um, so I completely get it. Like he kind of looks like the rest of them, but he doesn't. He doesn't act like the rest of them. He doesn't get it.
Yeah. Well, so I know the cartoon I don't think gives this like background.
No.
But I know in like the Jim Carrey Grinch
Mm.
movie, like he got bullied in school or something. Like he had a crush on someone and because he looked different, um
Well,
I'm
that's even more relatable.
yeah. Well, the first thing it thought of, it made me think of like after COVID, I feel like a lot of people a lot more people have been telling me how they're struggling connecting with people
Hmm.
um, in their communities, that they're having like they're having a lot more anxiety talking to people and like getting themselves out there, and they just like isolation is kind of comforting for them.
Hmm.
Um, and so it just, I mean, I guess it's hard because I'm like an extreme extrovert is what I tell people.
Okay.
Um, that's pretty much it. I am just a very extreme extroverted person. I thrive being around other people, which
Hmm.
is probably why today I had all these meetings and I'm like, I'm keeping them all because it's gonna pull me out. Like I know what it can do for me. But that's not how people who are introverts feel.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, do you feel like you have any tips of like, or I guess how do you identify? Do you identify as an introvert or an extrovert?
I see that's one of those things I have to ungaslight myself from. So I
Yeah.
always thought that like, everyone's always like, oh, you're a social butterfly, you're this, you're that. But I'm like, but I didn't have any friends in like I was bullied in elementary school. I didn't really have any friends until like high school. But so high school for me was actually really good in the sense of like that was the first time I had true friendship. Like I'm still really good friends with a decent amount of people that were my core in high school. We've all grown together, not apart. I love being around people. I have to be prepared to meet new people. So it's not necessarily that I don't want to meet new people. So it's only when it comes to like newer folks where I'm like, okay, I can do it. I can get over not necessarily my anxiety, but like my energy levels
Yeah.
and things to do it, because I always want to make another person feel comfortable. I never want them to feel uncomfortable, especially if they haven't done anything,
Yeah.
you know? Um, so that I kind of need to be prepared for, but I do have like a bunch of people that it doesn't matter what my energy levels are at. So it's like I'm extroverted, asterisk.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like after you're with people, so like if you get into a situation where you were like not prepared to meet a group of people, would that like exhaust you? Like would you have to go home and be like, I need to be alone, recharge?
Yeah. And I mean, again, not to be a typical millennial, but that's like whenever I have to go into the office, I
Yeah.
come home and I'm like, no, I can't. Like I physically have to go into the office tomorrow, which is not like a problem in the sense of like, okay, yeah, I can do it, but it's more so I know the people that I work with. I know that I'm not going to get any actual work done, but I know that it's going to be expected of me, and there's going to be so much small talk and things, which I like small talk, but like I'm not, and I'm a very social person, but I have boundaries at work.
Yeah.
And like these aren't people that I would socialize with, not in like a they're horrible people kind of way, but they're just not people I would choose to know outside those four walls, you know?
Yeah.
So like when they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" or like questioning things or even politics. Like
Mm.
politics comes up a lot. Like I work in tech, so you can only imagine the amount of cis men I work with
Yeah.
and cis straight men I work with who have very interesting opinions. That I either have to stomach because I can't punch somebody in the workplace. I have, you know. So
Yeah.
when I get home, I'm like, I would just like to play Candy Crush and
Yeah.
lie
Just
down
like zone
and
out.
yeah, and that's led to things where like if my mom comes into my room or something and then she's thinking like, "Oh, she's home now. I want to talk to her." And I'm like, "What do you want?" You know? She thinks that I'm mad at her. It's like, "No, I'm not mad at you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just I am on like low battery. I just essentials only right now. All background apps are closed.
Yeah.
I'm on power saving mode. What do you need?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do feel like that's a really common thing today. And I don't want to blame COVID, but it's also like I feel like it gave a lot of people like this restart or reboot
Hmm.
where they're like, oh, like I was kind of running on empty going in to the office every day and like just like kept pushing myself. And now that I've like learned to rest at my house, it's like now I don't want to go out. Like now I've like found this peace here. But I do like so I guess going back to like the introverts who have talked to me and
Yeah.
told me about the anxiety that they get. Um
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I mean, like my best advice is like I think you just need to step out of your comfort zone sometimes. Like I think
Yeah.
it can go both ways. Like people in your community should be trying to like, I mean, I know me in every community I am a part of, I do actively
Hmm.
try to like help people feel comfortable and welcomed. Um, but again, that's coming from like the very extroverted person. But I do feel like, there's only so much that other people can do. Like if
Yes.
you want to be a part of your community or enjoy like conversation, like you do have to kind of step out of your comfort zone,
Yes,
talk to
I
people,
agree. I
because then you will
agree.
end up in a mountain on top of a big
Yeah.
dog.
I mean, it's like airplane rules. You have to put your gas mask on first before you can put one on anybody else. So I say step out of your comfort zone for sure, but only if you have the capability and be honest with yourself about that capability.
Yeah. Well, especially for how many more people are identifying as neurodivergent now. I feel like that's been a really big obstacle of like trying to figure out like, yeah, you're ungaslighting yourself and figuring out like, okay, that was making me feel really uncomfortable. Is there a new way for me to like go about this so I can be a part of it? Um,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's also like trying to relearn yourself, but you still have to stay within the structures that you're in. There's not really much of a way out
Yeah. Um,
unless you make a radical change. And most people don't have the financial freedom, I'm going to
yeah.
say, to do that.
Yeah. I do have to say boundaries have been like a very hot topic in my reading. I've been loving learning about boundaries because I don't know. I don't think I really did growing up.
Hmm.
Because I just don't think it was like that big of a deal, or not that big of a deal. It wasn't like that big of a topic.
Hmm.
Where today I feel like it's a much bigger topic. Like people are very aware of it. All that educating, Look at us
Yeah.
educating ourselves out here. Uh,
It was a big topic in our household, though. Like in most South, like I'm South Asian, right? So with us, it's mostly privacy from our parents as like the bigger boundary, or like we end up having to live dual lives. So I'm like, what's being neurodivergent? But the boundary talk is becoming huge amongst our community as well, and it's like some parents, like my parents, are pretty okay with it, but like there's a lot of parents out there that get very like, what do you mean? Like my parents, blah, 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 blah. And it's very much trying to be like, yes, and how did you feel about that?
oh yeah. That I feel like that a lot. We just keep talking about it and I'm like, and did you like that? What? Crazy. Like, of course
Yeah.
you
Well,
didn't.
then why do you think I do?
Yeah.
Or, then I just try to lob in the bomb of, this is genetic, right?
I do love that. Um, so
Yes.
the Grinch. I guess where I struggle with this is like the bullying. Like a thing I talk a lot about is like raising inclusive kids
Mm-hmm.
and talking to all kids about different behaviors and different responses and different ways of communication. Um, and then the idea of like we treat people kindly. I guess it just like makes me think of like the Grinch story, like he got bullied and then just left. And then like no one, everyone was like, well,
All
he was
right.
angry. Let's get him out, like get him out of here. This is making me think of trusted relationships. This is where
Yes.
we should talk about because I think that's really important to find people that you connect with, maybe you share an identity with, um, that you like that. I feel like that's really important.
Yeah, community in general is important. And like having at least a trusted or a safe person is important.
Yeah.
And I feel like all the Grinch has is his dog. It makes me so sad for him. Like, not only did he not get the resources he needed as a child,
Mhm.
then he's forced to learn how to live on his own, become hyper independent on his own, and figure it out. Of course, he doesn't know what Christmas means.
Yeah.
Like, of course, he
Yeah.
doesn't identify with the people down there. Like, he doesn't even think he's one of them, which he is.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it makes me think of like, um, like disabled kids become disabled adults. And a lot of people like when there's like a behavior and they're like, oh, yeah, they'll grow out of it or something, or, like they're hitting, but it doesn't really hurt. So we're just gonna like ignore it kind of thing. And it's like, no, man, like this is the time. Like if they're, I mean, my gosh, when my kids were like babies, we were trying to use language that we just wanted us to be using in the house that was like, oh, you hit, like, ow, that hurts, like, no thanks, or whatever, like talking about it
Yeah.
and like having those strong boundaries. I mean, now, like literally tonight we were at my 4-year-old's dance practice, like little ballet class, and
Hmm.
my 2.5-year-old really likes, he also does a dance class, but on a different day. So today he just has to watch his sister do it.
Hmm.
And it was like a little performance and he kept running up and like wanting to dance with them. And it was very cute. But then I was like the only parent, running around and corralling him. And And I took him outside and I was like, if you can't sit down and watch the show, like we are going to have to just sit outside and watch from
Hmm.
out here. Like we can't go back in. And so we just like talked about it. And I mean, he's 2.5. He's very little. Um, and we went back in and he just like sat on my lap for almost the rest of it. He got a little antsy right towards the end, but it was a pretty long class. And I was like, I mean, I think I was even shocked too, but I had another parent that was like, "Oh my gosh, what did you threaten him with?" And I was like, "Just told him we were going to sit outside because he wants to be in here." But it was just one of those like little,
Like it doesn't have to be a harsh punishment or it doesn't have to be punitive or anything, you know?
yeah. And it's
Like
like,
you
I'm
could
on your
just,
side.
yeah, like, buddy, you and I want the same thing. You just have to modify your behavior slightly so that we can
Yeah.
both have the same thing.
Bhavna lives in Canada, and so we did have a couple of minutes talking about the difference between Canada and American schools. And I asked her if classrooms in Canada are segregated.
Or actually, I went to, so my elementary school, amalgamated with a disabled school. Because it was like in the TDS because they were closing down. So for funding, they were going to build a new school. So they built a new like our school was an alternative school. So to put it together was easier for the school board for funding and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Business stuff at the business office was decided. So for since yeah about grade 5 onwards, like grade 5 to grade 8, because our school was a K-8 school, we had there was a like it's obviously a specialized wing because you have to have everything optimized, but the entire school was accessible, and the kids that could join our classes did from
Yeah.
that. Like I don't like it wasn't really segregated. Like we were all friends, you know. Like yeah, there were some folks that couldn't really like play in any of the areas outside of that like area, but we would go and we would like have some classes there with them. They would have some classes with us, or like we had like a not a man like not mandatory, but kind of like like oh, it's time to go hang out with them now, and go down
Yeah.
and help volunteer, and not in like a oh we're taking care of you kind of way, but in like a building friendships and stuff. So
Yeah. I mean, I do
yeah.
know Canada is like ahead of the times compared to America. As you see, I forgot to have her introduce her own name until about halfway through the podcast, but this made me want to really focus on how important recognizing people's names, like what they want to be called, just how important that is. How important it is to say somebody's name correctly or whatever they want to be called correctly is such a great way to be inclusive.
Or like they would call it like I know my friends would call it like their school name.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, and it's like I can see why, but it also makes me sad. Like I want to be able to say like your given name or like what you want to
Or
be
what you
called.
prefer to be called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want to call you.
Yeah.
So, you know, let
I
me
was
know
just
your name.
stubborn and stuck to my guns. I'm like, my name's my name, and you're gonna say
I
it right.
love your name. Oh my gosh, I never even let you introduce yourself. Oh
That's
my God.
okay.
And I don't know how to say your name correctly. And I wanted to ask before we started. Here
That's
we go.
okay. Hi,
How do you
I'm
introduce
Bhavna.
yourself?
Yeah, Bhavna's fine. Bhavna Sharma.
Podcast, tech.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got a
Bhavna
couple
of
things.
the Bloody Broads pod.
Yes. And I'll make sure to put that. I try to put everything in the show notes so people
Can find me.
can find you.
For
So
me, I've famously like had almost hour-long conversations with people and then been like, "Oh yeah, by the way, that's my name. I have a name."
well, okay, so then if you're used to like
Yeah.
you prefer to say it's kind of like a letter where you say the whole letter and then at the end you're like, love, Bhavna.
Yes.
Maybe not love. It's up to you.
It depends on who I'm sending a letter to.
I throw love around a little, probably too liberally, but you know.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, and I feel like the Grinch story is something that's evergreen, pun intended, because there will always be people on the fringes of society. What that fringe is will always change. What puts them on the outside of society will always change, but the message is kind of universal.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe I'm a little cynical. I don't think a little girl asking me why I'm stealing her tree would make me change my mind.
Yeah.
But But I feel like all of us in some way, shape, or form have been the Grinch, whether we want to admit it to ourselves or not. And um, not all of us have been the Who's in Whoville.
Ooh, that's beautiful. I love that a lot.
Um, but it's true. And even if you have been a Who in Whoville, chances are you're a Grinch way more than you are someone in Whoville. Like
Yeah.
that you've been the Grinch.
I mean, I totally agree that it like takes both people. This made me think again about the building those genuine trusted relationships that like it's not just one person, like both people are actively supporting each other, being there for each other, learning about each other, like listening and talking. Because when it's a one-sided relationship, I feel like they fizzle out, or the one person who's really not as invested just it's not as
It's not fun being the
yeah,
one that's more invested than the other one, which goes for any kind of relationship, whether that be familial, fraternal, or, romantic.
yeah. It's just like not one person's problem.
It takes two to tango, to say another cliche thing. It's also part of the ungaslighting yourself journey, you have to learn that, maybe like I know personally, I learned the hard way that I was scrambling beyond my capability to be there for someone that used to be my best friend. And then in a minute, she was able to cut me off for something that she should have given me some grace on. Ever since her, I've been able to set better boundaries with newer people. Because the funny thing is I realized that was only a problem with her. All of my long lasting existing friends, not a problem. Like I
Yeah.
realized I'm like, oh, you don't exhaust me. And to bring that back to
Yeah.
the Grinch, he had no one to check up on him.
Yes. I try very hard to picture that the reason why people are bad sometimes is like that no one was there to like check in on them and be like, "Are you okay?" Which I know is not true. I know that some people just like really make bad choices. But in my little happy brain, that is what I try to do. So we can all be
It's
in Whoville together singing around Christmas trees all the time.
Yes. It's actually funny because I try hard to do the opposite because I'm someone, and this is the part of the neurodivergence, is that I can see all the angles to
Yeah.
something. I can understand someone's motivation, whether I condone it or I think it's right or wrong is a whole different story, but I can understand why. Like we were talking earlier about serial killers, like the thing that fascinates me about them is just the why of it all,
Yeah.
not not the not I don't thrive off the gory ooh like violence or anything like that. No, it's more like why I'm not capable of those things. How are you? You know.
Yeah.
Um but I have to struggle with the no, I am also valid.
Yeah.
Like that I am not going to diminish my own actions or my own feelings on something just because somebody else is having a bad day.
Yes.
It depends, but I prioritize it. It's not like a me all the time. I look at this is also why I'm in tech. Like I can prioritize things in severity queue. So it's
Yeah.
like okay, it's cutting someone off in traffic is different than like somebody not delivering something to you on time, not a package, but something that you expected at a certain time, something that had a deadline.
Yeah.
That's different. Then that's like I don't care. You have a responsibility.
Yes. Yeah, I mean there's definitely still like boundaries that can be made. But I think I just wouldn't I still wouldn't be like mean or
No,
mad.
no, 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 no. Of
But
course
yeah.
not. Of course not. And I'm not either. I'm just saying I've had to learn to be a little more assertive for myself in those situations.
Yeah.
Just to
Oh,
be like, I can't just be like, oh, well, it's okay. Like, because to bring it back to that friendship, that was kind of it. Like I would kind of hold myself back because she was going through something worse.
yeah.
But then it turned out that something else was always worse and something else was always worse and something else was always worse. And I'm like, why do I feel bad? Not like, why do
Yeah.
I feel bad about the situation, but like, why do I feel hollowed out?
I mean, I think that's a great reflection to be able for you to do um for because yeah, I mean having someone who's so close and then I mean, I know definitely since having kids, a lot of like my boundaries, my values, like what is important to like what of my time is important has just very drastically changed. And yeah, it's definitely been hard for people to adjust to this new like like I don't have time for you to be mad at me for this or for you to bring it like if you want to talk about it, we could talk about it later or like it's definitely gotten my time has gotten way more limited. So
Yes.
it definitely changes things. But I think that's and I think that's also an important thing to like teach kids like with and without disability, well, with
Mm-hmm.
and without disabilities, especially like in schools and stuff. Like I'm such a, and it's probably so annoying, and I'm excited to see like how my children turn out someday. Because it is like they hit, and it's like, okay, I see that you hit. It looks like you're frustrated. Like first you have to check in because they're crying. Like, let's talk about it. Okay, so why did you hit? Like, and we are sitting there talking about it. I would say like 80% of the time. There's definitely times where I'm like, oh my God, you guys just stop. What are you doing? I get mad. But
And and that's one of those things I think about. I'm like, had my parents just instead of being like, just stop it, or like, that's not my problem. You guys figure it out. Like, had my parents not been like that, how different me and my siblings would be.
I just feel like I've learned so much. And
Oh.
I just love, I don't know, I just like love these open conversations of like, just like what we can do, what people like around the world are doing differently, like different people and different journeys with different disabilities. We almost said goodbye, but then we remembered something else. I love nonfiction books.
Mm-hmm.
And I call them like social science books.
Mm-hmm.
And just love them because I love hearing about all these different ways of people like communicating and like just like how the brain works, how it's developing, like child development, adult change. I don't know. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love those books so much. And I love those books about trauma, and I love those books about trauma. That's like a weird. I feel like that's a weird thing to say.
No,
I
you
love
love learning
learning.
about how trauma affects people,
Yes,
not you're not thriving off of other people's trauma.
thank you. That is how I should have said that. Thank you so much. But I just feel like it just like helps me learn
Mm-hmm.
how to communicate with people and connect with people and like just understand like where they could possibly be coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That's one of the things I love about the horror community in general because it literally is the island of misfit toys to talk about another
yeah,
Christmas like IP. Uh like it's I and you can find yourself in different niches. It's not just the dude bros that yell and like want gore and all that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong, I love watching gore. I would rather watch that than any of the news cycle in the last like 24 hours. It's a really good community, at least, and also the niche that I've like myself and my co-host Jamie have found ourselves in. Like we're in a very inclusive echo chamber of folks across the spectrum of humanity, and we all have this in common, you know?
yeah,
And there's so many horror subgenres, and there's things like we practice all this stuff. We practice all this inclusivity in our own circles as well. Like, for example, my co-host doesn't like movies like Saw or like that are more torture-y, like Hostel and stuff like that. I don't mind them, and some of them I really like, but we won't cover those because I'm like, no, that's not something we can both like. I'm not going to make you uncomfortable
yeah.
by watching that, and stuff
I
like
love
that. So
that.
we're very like aware of each other's stuff. Like I'll even tell her like ahead of time because usually I'll see a movie before her, and I'm like, hey, so this has teeth stuff and nail stuff. You might not want to watch it.
Yeah,
Or you might want to watch it at home where you can skip it. But those are just the little everyday things. Like there's also so many other things. Like I actually did write an article. I was gonna write a whole series, but then I had to change my medication and I kind of I got medicated finally for my ADHD and kind of lost my focus, which is hilarious. But I did write one article about about being othered in the space for others in the horror sphere about my friend Stan. Well, he goes by Stan
yeah.
the mechanic. He's a horror host, so think like Elvira, but a bear.
Okay.
And his persona is like a mechanic, so he's in coveralls and stuff. And about him being, um, you know, yeah, he's queer in a horror space, which there's plenty of folks like that, but he's not what most of them look like and not what most of them expect. And as a horror host, like, he doesn't want to appeal to just his niche audience and stuff like that. So like
Yeah.
there's a lot of discussion to be had, but in terms of feeling like a community and having trusted people, horror spheres are usually some of the more accepting and inclusive.
Yeah. That's interesting. Why would you think that? Or why do you think that?
Because horror in general is like the Grinch on steroids when it comes to others. Like, yeah, there are villains, but sometimes the villains aren't villains. Like you can feel sympathy for some of these people, and sometimes you can't. It's also a great way it's a good outlet where the evil does get defeated.
Yeah.
And there's like, I forgot this quote. It was by Jordan Peele, who makes great horror movies, by the way.
I've seen some.
Um, yeah, he said something like someone had asked him, so at a Q&A I was at, someone had asked him like, even in your comedy, you would always have some horror elements in there. Like, yeah, some of your comedy shows through in your horror as well, but like, why do you do that? He goes, because real life is horror.
Yeah.
And you can't make comedy about real life without having horror in there. So, that because we can make our jokes all day long, but that's what real life is. And right now, it absolutely is that for a large population of this planet.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of people like I mean, as we said, we're recording the day after the election, that like people were posting like memes or something that were kind of funny or like kind of making jokes about stuff because they were just like, laughter's the best medicine. Like this is just something I need or, and it's like
Hmm.
and I've also noticed like trying to like connect with some people during this. It's like the people that I knew who like felt the way that I felt are the people that like we've been like trying to connect, like checking in on each other, which I mean, it's so easy to do. It like it could just take a second to like reach out to one person a day, even through texting or an email, just like you don't even need to ask a question. You could just be like, "Hey, I'm like checking in. I hope you're okay. If you need me, I'm here." Like
Yeah.
it's
Like like I sent a bunch of my close friends that are American or that are directly affected by everything. So a lot of Canadians too, I guess. Um, but just like, hey, just take care of yourself today. Like just take care of yourself, however that is.
yeah.
Like take a minute for you.
Someone posted like, "Don't forget to eat today." And I
Yep.
was just like, "Whoa, I have not eaten yet today. Like I will go force myself like to go eat some cereal right now." And then throughout the rest of the day, whenever I like saw someone posting, whatever people were posting, I was like, "Don't forget to eat. Like go have a
Yeah.
snack, go drink some water." Like it
Yep.
was and it like and also like the ripple effect. I mean, it's that whole like, doing good deeds so more people will do good deeds. I don't think you have to post about them, but just like do them.
No, like that's a whole different story.
I know. That's a whole nother episode. But the conversation couldn't end there because we again started talking about a totally different topic, but we were just so excited to learn from each other. And so it was really nice to like hear um, what she works on compared to what I'm working on and the similarities and the differences. And I love how she talked about relearning her language in one of these situations that happened at her college. So let's check it out.
Like my first year of university, those like cork boards that are in like schools and stuff? Like they had one in our dorm
Yeah.
and it just said words that hurt. And I'm not going to say the word because I haven't used that word since that day, but I always thought the word was spelled JIP. And I didn't know it was short for the word gypsy, which I also don't use. I was just using it there just once, but like I
Yeah.
didn't realize that it was derogatory. I knew that that word was derogatory because I knew about the Romani people, but I didn't know that that's how that word was spelt.
Oh.
And then I'd always used it in like a derogatory sense, right? Because I just thought like, oh, okay, it's just, you know, just a word or whatever. And then I
Yeah.
realized and I'm like, oh, that's not good. I'm not
Yeah.
using that, you know? And
Yeah.
it's just something as simple as that. Just like a little, like, it doesn't even take much. That was just a sign on a board.
Yeah.
So
That,
like
yeah.
if people just need to be willing to see, accept that they might be wrong and just know that we're always learning. You're
Yeah.
never going to reach enlightenment ever. You're going to reach, you're just going to keep on striving and that's all we can do.
Yeah. I talk about this book a lot because it's like my favorite book, nonfiction book, and it's called Think Again by Adam Grant.
Hmm.
And it talks about how, like, like, basically switching the mindset of like, you should want to be wrong because now you're
Hmm.
closer to being right. Um, Even though you might not ever be right because, like, things are always changing, you're learning, you're growing, you're rethinking. But basically, just trying to be like, when you are wrong, be like, oh, like, good, we figured out the next step. Where can we go from here? And like view it as a more positive thing.
Yeah.
Because, yeah,
And I found that as I get older, I'm like, okay, the more graceful way I accept that I'm not that I'm wrong about something or that I'm, wrong about something maybe that I thought of my whole life and things like that, like is the more at peace I've been.
yeah,
It's more of like a, okay, all right, wow, not doing that again. Let's move on.
yeah. So simple. Yet
Yeah.
it seems so
Like,
hard as well.
yeah, yeah. I'm not saying it's always been so easy, but it's like, okay, let's not beat myself up. I didn't know, but also let's take accountability and not do that again.
Yes.
It's like, have you heard of the spoons theory? You only have so many
Oh,
spoons in a
yes.
day and you don't have the same amount every day. It's almost like a battery thing. I like to use battery. Like if you only have, let's just say, 60% on your battery, but you have to give all of that 60% to get through all the essentials of your day. So that for you, that would be like, whatever work you do, taking care of your kids, making sure you're also taken care of. And then by the end of the day, you don't have anything left. You've given 100% of that 60. You may have only been at 60, but then you're at zero now,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, I
know?
like that. I've heard that analogy with like relationships of where it's like like to couples of like, do you both give 100% to your relationship, or who gives more maybe? And it's like we both give 100% and we both, but that also looks different every day. Like maybe one day
Yeah.
they're doing like the 80% and I'm doing 20 or 180 and I'm doing 20, or well, whatever. It's like we are both always actively working with each other, but it's going to look different based off of what we're able to give that day.
You can get one can pick up the slack for the other when the other needs it.
Yeah.
And if you're both not up to it, then it's like, okay, we reprioritize and move on.
Yes. Moving on. I love moving on so much.
So not everything needs to be dwelled on.
And for all of those listeners who know that I've been trying to implement this cat tarot card reading, I totally forgot. And I keep missing guests and forgetting to do it all myself for the educational talks. But I thankfully remembered for Bhavna, who is an avid tarot card reader slash user. So check it out. Okay, so I just kind of shuffled them a few
Yep.
times. I kind of just tell people, oh my gosh, my green screen is giving me away. So you can tell me when to stop and I will try to stop, right?
Stop.
Okay.
Oh, we got a slider.
I know. This card is very excited to see
We
you.
got a jumper.
Oh God, come
What
on.
what is it?
Okay, let's
Oh, it's a
see.
cat. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
they're
they're
all
all cat
cats.
sets.
This is
Is
the
it
night.
a
Oh my gosh, you didn't. I usually I have people ask a question. We're just gonna totally go with
Yeah.
question. I'm just gonna tell you about your life right now.
Yeah, please do.
Knight of Swords, and that is like really
Yeah, that's a
cool
cute Knight of
rainbow.
Swords.
Okay, so it was upright when you saw
Mhm.
it, so
Yep.
that means ambition and direct. Can't stop, won't stop. The knight propels ahead on their mission. So,
Aw.
Let's see. The last thing your
That's
drive.
comforting to me.
Yeah, that's good. The first one that I did was such a good one. I was like, I'm almost about to retire the deck because I'm like that. Like I could not have gotten a better answer for my question that I had.
Mhm.
Um, the next it says your drive is relentless. Nothing will get in the way of making your dreams come true. Your energy is unmatched, but try not to steamroll others in the process. You may push ahead faster, but end up with an unwanted outcome.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm just gonna sit here and give myself readings for the rest of the night.
Please do.
But thank you so much. It was so nice
Oh,
to
no,
meet
thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. Thank you, Seasonal Coffee, for being in my life. And if you have any questions or inclusion wins, make sure to share them. And I would love to start having a portion of my podcasts where people can share their inclusion wins. Inclusion starts with you, and I just want to help. Have a great day. Bye.